You know, it's almost like these people don't run barrels. What's up, everyone? I'm Amber, and welcome back to whatever this is. Should barrel racers use rubber bands? That's what we're going to talk about in today's video, because this is one of the most hotly contested topics I have ever seen when it comes to barrel racers and the internet. There is such a militant force behind anyone who sees a barrel racer use rubber bands that it's just, you cannot go to any video where someone sees someone using a rubber band on their foot and there being just absolute anarchy in the comments. First, let's get into the topic as to why barrel racers use rubber bands. Now, if you read the comments, you would think it's because barrel racers can't ride. For example, you shouldn't need rubber bands. Go back to the basics and learn how to keep your feet in the stirrups. Just learn how to ride. Every non-barrel racer professional level trainer laughs at barrel racers in general. We all laugh harder if you rubber band your stirrups. That one was a bit of a mouthful. Why did I have such a hard time saying that? Maybe it's because this person is just not making any sense. Leaving your page now. First clue of a loser rider: rubber bands to hold your stirrups on. Ruffle Mow. It's sad how poorly some barrel racers ride. If you need bands to keep your feet where they belong, then you should probably go back for riding lessons. Or learn to ride better. Learn to ride. The rubber crutch isn't necessary. With how honest you are with barrel racers and your opinions, you'd think you'd learn to ride better, so you wouldn't need to use rubber bands. My riding in question.
What you gonna be? And do you believe you can do anything? But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?
Do I use rubber bands? Yes. Guilty as charged. So let's get into why barrel racers use rubber bands. And it's not for the reasons you think. And it's not actually who you think would use them the most. Contrary to popular belief, as we have just read, it is not the bad riders that use rubber bands. In fact, when you look at the biggest demographic of rubber band users, it's not your 3D and 4D riders. It's your 1D riders. Take, for instance, Anita Ellis, Danielle Campbell, Haley Kinzel, Cassie Mowry, Emily Beisel. These people are some of the best riders in our nation. In fact, I would probably argue that Cassie Mowry is one of the best riders. That it competes at the NFR futurity trainer, bar none. She is probably one of the best in our sport because she's so quiet. She lets her horses work. She trusts in her training. Everything she does is just so finely tuned, and yet she uses rubber bands. Does she need them? Probably not, but there is a psychology behind using rubber bands that we're gonna go ahead and dive into. These horses that these ladies are riding, these are the top of the top of the top horses. They're not your 3D horses, they're not your 4D horses. Just about anyone can hang on to those horses. You can lose a stirrup, lose both stirrups, and you're gonna be able to hang on. Nah, I'm not saying this to be mean to 3D and 4D riders, but the power level behind your 3D and 4D horses, vastly different compared to your top 1D horses, to your rodeo level horses, your pro rodeo level horses. There is such a big power scale that I don't think people truly understand when it comes to your top of the top 1D and your everyday 3D, 4D horse. So for these top riders, when you are competing for $20,000 and up, $100,000 checks, would you not want to have 2 cents worth of insurance policy around your foot? I'm kind of thinking you would. because anything can happen in a run. Your horse could stumble, trip, whatever. You and your horse could come out of sync for whatever reason, and having your foot stay where you want it to, you're not thinking about your foot now. You are only thinking about what you have to do. So everything else, like barrel racing is such a high speed sport. This is not dressage. This is not Western pleasure. Everyone's saying, well, people who ride English don't use rubber bands. People don't use ride Western pleasure, don't use rubber bands. Why do you think that is? Are they running mock Jesus around 3 trash cans? No. No, they're not. There is quite literally only one other sport that uses rubber bands, and it is the, I have to be careful how I say this, the mounted pew-pewers. That sounds so bad, but we're gonna have to roll with it. And a lot of times with them, you know, they're using their firearms, right? Their one hand is off the reins, maybe both hands if they're using the rifle, and you have to take into consideration that these horses are also running very fast around an obstacle course. So for a lot of these top riders, it is simply an insurance policy so they can focus on the race itself. They don't have to worry about their feet. Another reason as to why someone might use rubber bands is poor stirrups and a poorly made saddle. Now, I can already imagine you're already typing, well, if someone needs to use rubber bands, then maybe they should just get a new saddle. Listen, not everyone can afford to drop $3 to $4 grand on a really good, properly made saddle. Some people, they have to make what they have work until the time comes where they can buy new tack. Now, the stirrups, again, good stirrups can cost you a pretty penny. Not as much as a new saddle, but they can cost you a pretty penny. So if your stirrups are not allowing you to keep your feet in, then using a rubber band is going to help with that, so you don't have to constantly focus on your feet and you can just focus on the run. Now, a poorly made saddle for me is one that does not have forward hung stirrups. I absolutely love my saddles to have forward hung stirrups. That allows me to sit deep in my seat, and I don't even really have to worry about what my feet are doing because they will 9 times out of 10 stay in the stirrups. So if your saddle has the stirrups set back more, it's gonna be a lot harder for you to keep your feet in the stirrups because it's trying to force your legs back behind you and keep them a little bit more square underneath your shoulders. But for barrel racing, that's not what you want. You want your stirrups to be hung forward so you can sit deep, because the farther back your stirrups are, the harder it is for you to sit deep in that saddle, and that sitting deep and using your feet where you need to is what keeps them in place. So if someone is using rubber bands for those reasons, understand they're probably not doing it because they're scared of falling off. They're probably doing it because the saddle is keeping them from riding the way that they know they need to ride. So for me, when it comes to rubber bands, I will always use them in poles and only sometimes in barrels. So when it comes to barrels, sometimes I'll use them in barrels for the simple fact of, is there a lot of money involved? If there's a lot of money that I'm running for, then again, it's just an insurance policy to where if my horse does trip or stumble or whatever, then I'm not focusing on my foot. I'm focusing on trying to run the fastest race that I can to get as much money as I possibly can. If it's a local jackpot, I don't care. I won't rubber band my feet in. I won't. Now, for poles, I will always use rubber bands for poles. Why? Because I stay two-handed the entire way. Not only that, but there have been times where I have lost stirrups while running poles, and I've lost both my stirrups around the very first pole, on numerous occasions, and I've still won those classes. But I've also lost pole bending classes because my stirrup flapping around knocked poles over. That really just so for those reasons, that's why I like using rubber bands. It's not because I'm a bad rider. I'm a very good rider. Not to toot my own horn, but toot toot. I like to use them occasionally simply because don't want to knock a pole over, and if I'm competing for big money, you bet your grandma's bottom I'm gonna freaking use 2 cents worth of rubber. So again, it's not your 3D and 4D riders that use rubber bands. Your slower riders, the ones that most people would deem as being the bad riders of our group. And I'm not gonna say this to degrade the 3D and 4D riders at all. But the 3D and 4D riders, that is your slower divisions. So that's where people that are just starting, they're going to start and say like the 5D, 4D, and 3D and kind of move up from there. So that's where you're going to see the lesser skilled riders, but I won't necessarily say all of them are bad. But they're the ones that don't normally use rubber bands. It is 99.99999% your top 1D riders that use rubber bands. I'm gonna read some more of these comments because it's just... Tell me you can't sit your horse without aids. You suck! Why can't you just hold your feet in place? Oh, so you can grab down and lose control connection. Effing DEI riders. I don't even think this person's brain is connecting with what they're trying to say. Stop using rubber bands and take some lessons to gain true balance. If you're using a rubber band, you need to learn to ride better. This should not be copied. Learn to ride. If you can ride proper, you don't need rubber bands. Or just learn to ride. No, that's not why we don't like rubber bands. We don't like them because if you're using them, that means you can't keep your feet in the stirrups, aka riding properly. Dumb, why would you ever need that? Or just learn to ride. Waste of time. How about you learn to ride properly, then I won't need rubber bands. Okay. Say me not riding properly makes you have to use rubber bands? Go you! Hot take, just learn to ride. Hot take, just learn to spell. Or just learn how to ride and keep your feet in the damn stirrups. Again, if you go and look at any of these people, none of them actually run barrels. So yes, 99.99999% of your top 1D riders will use rubber bands. They are the biggest demographic, the biggest division of, you could say, rubber band abusers there are within barrel racing. And hot take for anyone who is not a fan of rubber bands, these people are the best riders in our sport. You cannot make the 1D and be a bad rider. Not lying, not kidding. I know so many people are like, well, yes, you can't. No, you can't. Then you get on a horse, a top 1D horse, that is so much more powerful than your 3D and 4D horses, and then you tell me that you don't need to be a good rider to keep up with these horses and keep them winning. That's the key. Keep these horses winning. Come back to me and tell me how that goes. So, to end this video, should barrel racers use rubber bands? Honestly, here's how it all boils down to. Not your foot, not your problem. It's not a matter of should someone not use rubber bands. Me personally, I don't care either way. Now, I do not like the big thick rubber bands that so many people do use. I feel like you can get, into some pretty sticky situations with those. I like the really thin ones, and I use the Cassie Mowry method of putting my rubber bands on. So to dispel some of the myths, no. Barrel racers are not bad riders for using rubber bands. I mean, even some of your English riders use magnets in their stirrups, okay? Just because it's outlawed doesn't mean it's not being used, all right? Chill. Barrel racing is not like any other discipline within the equestrian world. The only comparable we can have really is the mounted pewers. Yeah. So stop using Western pleasure, stop using English, hunter jumper, hunter under saddle, Western riding, ranch riding. All of those things are not comparable to barrel racing, and you have to be a good rider to make the top 1D level, to make the NFR, to win these $30, $50, $100,000 checks at these big shows. You cannot get there by just hanging on like a damn drunk monkey, being like, I'm not using rubber bands, but this horse is going fast. See, anyone can do it. I know that was a really bad representation of how I view some of you all militant anti-rubber band people in the comments, but that's what it looks like, so. So if you would, leave a like. If you'd like to see more videos like this, subscribe, and I will see you all in the next video. And until then, work hard, stay misfits. I like this comment from someone that uses rubber bands. I always buckle in. I don't care if they're thick. It'll be a good death. Too true, too true.